Hello, and welcome to the Guns on Pegs podcast with me, George Brown.
And me, Chris Horn. How are you, George?
Yeah, very well indeed. Thank you, Chris. Very well indeed. Back from my holidays.
Tell everyone where you were and what you were doing, more importantly.
Well, yeah, I was in Slovakia, which, as we've discussed before, is where my wife is from. And later this year, it will be our 5th wedding anniversary. But when we first tied the knot over here, a lot of Misha's family weren't able to make it. So we'd always said that when we've been married for 5 years, we'd have a big old party over there and invite all of her family and a few of our lot to go over. So we've just done that, and we had a very, very nice time.
Well, congratulations for the second time.
Thank you very much. I think I heard Digby say in the last one, which I edited, that I was marrying the same woman for the second time, which is quite a good way of putting it.
He did say that. We thought we were going to take the opportunity whilst you weren't here to just completely lay into you the whole time, but we really failed. We missed such an open goal. But anyway, another time.
Maybe it was maybe your conscience got the better of you.
Yeah. So just a quick one before we move on. I heard whilst listening to a podcast the other day that on these major podcasts, you know, the big ones that the world talks about, before they do them, they have huge interview sessions with potential hosts. And during the interview session, they make them take personality tests so they can match up the right hosts of these big podcasts, like The Rest is Entertainment, The Rest is History, and all that sort of stuff.
Oh, what you mean? But when they do the I see what you mean. Yes, when they do the hosts who they're going to pair together.
Yeah, so they all do these big in-depth personality tests to choose the right people that are going to blend on the podcast.
Yeah.
We didn't do that.
No.
So I have created a personality test just to ask you some questions to work out whether we think we would be good hosts together on this podcast.
Well, the rest is countryside.
The rest is shooting.
Are we applying for a job with Mr. Lineker? Is that what's happening?
I could only think of 2 questions that would be the qualifying criteria for this. One is, do you like a drink the night before a shoot?
Yes. I mean,
right, good.
You don't even need the second half of that. Yes, I like a drink.
And I thought the other appropriate question, given my feelings, is do you shoot with side by side?
Yes, I do.
Right. Well, those are the only 2 questions. I think that we make the perfect co-hosts with one another for this pod. I don't think it needs to be any more in depth.
I don't know why, but somehow this feels a bit like the second wedding I've just had. It feels like you're proposing to me or something. Very good.
I just thought it was mental how the in-depth detail they go into with these personality tests.
Yes, well, as we have established several times before, we are not a professional podcast. We have not got producers and professionals backing us up. This is all made up and invented as we go along. So I think it's fitting.
Indeed. I shall introduce our guest, though.
Good idea.
Today, we have a former game farmer. He is shoot captain on a shoot in Worcestershire, which we are going to ask a bit about shortly. But interestingly, he's been making real waves with his trademark eggplant apron and engaging game cookery videos under the handle @thegameglutton on Instagram. I strongly urge you to go and check it out. He's also soon to be much more prominent in the shooting world, and he may disagree with this, but we don't, as he starts working with Eat Wild and involved in the marketing board for game, and obviously therefore how game and shooting comes across to the public. So it's an absolute honor to have with us today this really interesting chap, and for a really interesting conversation on all the things that's got him to where he has got to and where it's all going. So put down your wooden spoons and put your hands together for Hugo Campbell-Hill.
Well, thank you very much for having me on the pod, guys. That's a lovely introduction, and probably a little bit fabricated, but thank you.
It's not. That's the thing. Everyone always feels they are, but they're not.
It sounds a lot better when someone else says it.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? It's really nice to have you on, Hugo, because I've been enjoying your videos for a really long time, and I'm very much looking forward to having a chat about it in your Instagram account in general a bit later on. But first of all, I wanted to ask you a bit about the shoot where you are shoot captain. Tell us a bit about it.
Well, basically, it's in Worcestershire. It's on the old game farm that I used to manage. And my father was shoot captain there years ago, and his best friend runs the shoot. And I mean, I'm sure we'll go into it later, but my father passed away when I was a bit younger, and my dad's best friend, who's sort of a godfather to me, became a surrogate father and took me on at the game farm, and I stayed there, and I've sort of come through the ranks, and now I have the privilege of cooking everyone 11sies and putting guns on pegs, and generally trying not to cock any days up.
So what sort of size of day are you doing? How many days a season?
So do about it's gone up last year. So we did about 10 days last season. We just got some old partridge ground back, which was very exciting. Over the road, which we hadn't had for sort of 10 years. So we did 10 days last year, somewhere between 100 and 150 birds usually. So yeah, it's a nice sort of local syndicate farm shoot, couple of let days in there. Everyone gets involved with each other. We all eat together. We've got a cracking little shoot shed that's an old carving shed that's been converted, and got a rustic old wood burner in there, and it's just great fun, and it's all about the camaraderie where we are.
And the best 11s in the county, I expect.
Well, I'd hope so. I mean, it was COVID that was a real driver for that, when we had to work out how we would feed everyone outdoors, and I started playing around with all that stuff. So yeah, it's been good fun, and just enjoying it.
What's the topography like over where you are? Because Worcestershire's got a bit of everything, doesn't it?
It does. So where I am, South Worcestershire, we are blessed with great rolling slopes that are probably about 5 meters inclined. So it's very flat. We get the pleasure of looking at one of the best hills in the country, Breeden Hill, which is about 10 miles down the road. We can see a hill, but no, we're quite flat. So we have to make the most of what we've got. I don't want to spoil anything for later in the podcast, but I can talk about some of the drives later on. So
it's always funny when you go to a shoot in an area like that. It reminds me of driving up to sort of Lancashire, Cumbria direction, and you can be driving up the sort of day before a shoot, thinking, oh, this one's going to be, really hilly. It's going to show some amazing birds. And as you're sort of approaching, it then starts getting flatter and flatter and flatter, and you're like, "Oh no, we've gone past the good bit. Where are we going?" And it's one of those moments where you've driven 4 hours and you've gone past the best bit.
I think I said on the podcast before, I've always felt slightly hard done by where we are here in Hampshire, because if you go 5 minutes up the A34, you're on proper kind of chalk escarpments, nearly sheer-sided ridges and deep valleys and all the rest of it. And if you go 10 minutes in the other direction, you're also in that kind of area. But our farm is just all sort of one very gentle slope, from top to bottom, with nothing approaching a valley of any description, really. And I've always felt a bit shortchanged by that.
It's interesting around us. Our sort of recent life is now in Kent, as listeners to the pod may know, but a lot of people talk about Kent being very flat, and it is. A lot of it is very flat, except for aspects of the Weald on one side. And then the bit that no one really talks about, or a lot of people don't know about, is the North Downs. That everyone will know the start of the North Downs, because they're the hills on the inside of the M25, the sort of Surrey part. And that then becomes the White Cliffs of Dover, the other end, and they're literally chopped off and you can see straight through them. That runs up part of Kent, and you get some unbelievable shooting ground that people don't really know about up there, and well worth visiting if it ever comes on the radar.
Always open for an invite.
I don't have a shoot on them, annoyingly. That would sort a lot of problems.
Very good. Right. It's a nice sunny day, so I think we should press straight on, and I'm going to start with you, Hugo. What's that you're drinking?
Well, as I'd hope everyone knows, it's English Wine Week. So I've got some of the finest Worcestershire wine going, Deer Park, and I've gone for their Bacchus because it is a lovely hot day, and Bacchus is just the perfect summer English white. And Deer Park have done very well this week. So I don't know if you can see on the video, Bacchus 2022 has just won a bronze medal at the Decanter World Wine Awards. Which is very impressive. But what's more impressive is their Pinot Noir has just taken a silver medal there and had the highest score of any 2022 vintage English Pinot Noir.
Wow.
So Very proud Worcestershire boy I am.
That's exciting.
Yeah, and it's a cracking drop.
And so I'm absolutely with you on an English Bacchus. It's obviously a grape that's very predominant in English wines. Pinot Noir reds are in England, I find often a real disappointment. And there is one of the vineyard which I can see out the end of that window near us in Kent, which they've got some beautiful sparkling wines, like a lot of places do. Their Pinot Noir is brilliant on the nose and then literally tasteless from there on.
Well, obviously I can't talk about that, but I know at Deer Park, it was only made in 2022, the Pinot Noir, because obviously 2022 we had that droughty hot summer and it's all about average day temperature and ripening the grapes. And so usually the Pinot Noir will be going into fizzy wine, but it ripened, had a go, and this has just got everything that a cold climate Pinot Noir needs.
You speak as somebody who knows a bit more about viticulture than most.
I might caveat it by the fact that I do sort of do a bit of part-time work with Deer Park, so so yeah, my subtle plug has gone well noticed there. But no, we were absolutely ecstatic when the results came in on Wednesday. So yeah, it works well for me at Deer Park. So they offer me sort of a part-time job there in return for using the commercial kitchen to start my business up. So that's where the technique goes. And obviously I'm very passionate about, well, mostly Worcestershire, obviously England as a wider prospect. And it's just great. It's fantastic that I think there's 2,500 commercial vineyards in the country, and there was 18 silver medals for English wines this year at the Decanter World Wine Awards, and Deer Park got 2 of them. So it's quite impressive stuff. It's very exciting.
It would be very remiss of me if at this point I didn't give a plug to our sister podcast Beyond the Hedge and their very excellent episode all about English wine, which anybody who's interested in learning more should go and have a listen to. Beyond the Hedge is the name of the podcast, and I think it's called English Wine. I think that's the name of the episode. So yeah, go and have a listen to that when you finish listening to this.
I didn't know it was English Wine Week, Hugo, so thank you for that. And that means I shall have to go down there tomorrow and pay them a visit, just out of principle.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very good. George, what are you drinking?
Well, as you know, as I just said, I came back from Slovakia just under a week ago. And in the past, I've been very rude about Slovakian drinks, but they do make very good beer. So I'd planned to bring some back with me, but in the end, I didn't have space in my suitcase, what with all the various wedding presents and what have you I had to bring back as well. So this afternoon, I nipped down to the local farm shop just to try and find a nice local beer, and I failed again. But what I did find is Keller Lager from a brewery. It's not too far away. They're in Reading, which is about 45 minutes away, but in a different county. But the reason I felt I had to have it is the name of the brewery is Double Barreled. So it felt very suitable.
Nice.
And it's called Ding is the name of the lager. So Double Barreled Ding Keller Lager, 4.9% ABV. And it's unfiltered and unpasteurized and hazy and very crisp and cool and refreshing. It's delicious.
Ding. That's a very odd name. The only time I ever hear the word ding is in relation to barrels. They've got to be linked. Dinging your barrels.
Oh, I see. Yes. Maybe that's what it is.
Maybe secretly they love shooting and they're keen listeners to the pod and you just bought their beer. Great.
But anyway, it's really good. And I've got another one in the fridge for when this one runs out, which it's in fairly severe danger of doing already.
You've got a fridge near your desk, which is very well organised, because I don't. And my other beer is sitting next to me and getting warm. So I may have to pause halfway through when I run out and go and grab a third that would be. Because I've decided this week's been a very good week for a bunch of things. So I've bought 2 and put a third in the fridge.
So what is it then?
It's called Hiver. I got given a few beers along with a gift. I think it was a Moonpig thing, to be honest, by someone for my birthday last week before, whenever it was. And it says, come and visit the Hiver Bee and Beer experience. Get hands-on with beekeeping. So I'm trying to work out what the link is between this beer and bees. But apparently they've got a strong obsession for bees and they support British bees or to do with this beer. But anyway, it tastes quite nice.
So hang on, I'm not clear. What is the link with bees? They just like bees.
I think that is the link. Yep. I mean, they're Hiver beers in London. So, yeah, I don't know. Can't really see the link. It's just they love bees and beer. So
I can get on board with that. I like bees. I like beer.
they've got a hashtag that said "plant for bees" on their label, and it's got I don't know what that's got to do with beer either.
No.
Maybe they've got a side business of some hot flavored honey.
That would make the link all relevant. Maybe they haven't though.
Complete guess, yeah.
But yeah, I've got the session IPA, and then next to me I have the amber beer as well. So look forward to that in a minute.
Very nice. Well, we're all set up. So what we're going to do now, Hugo, is turn to our email inbox. We ask our listeners to write in and submit their quandaries and queries and dilemmas in a segment we call Whose Bird Is It Anyway? And this episode's Whose Bird Is It Anyway? Comes from somebody who emailed pod@gunsonpegs and who I have decided to call Brutus to keep them anonymous, although I suspect that my co-host, by the time I get through the first sentence, might know who it's from. It goes, last year I went to a very prestigious charity clay shoot at one of the royal estates and entered a team called the Lead Kings.
Oh,
amongst the exhibitors at the event was the Gunmakers Trust, who have a tent staffed by 2 apprentice gunsmiths who have benefited from the Trust's bursary scheme. At lunchtime, one of my teammates, who shall remain nameless, had his ancient side-by-side, that clearly hadn't been serviced since the Boer War, extensively repaired by them, free of charge, on the stand. My teammate then sponged cash off me to give the apprentice a £20 tip for his troubles. The apprentice saw the £20 being exchanged between the sponger and I, i.e. seeing the rabbit. The required repairs turned out to be so extensive that it became a 2-apprentice job, and my teammate then took my £20 note and asked a second teammate if they had change for the £20 note for 2 tenors, so they could give each apprentice £10. Is this good form to abuse the apprentice's goodwill at a charity clay shoot like this? Should the teammate have given each apprentice £20 instead of £10 each? Apprentice 1 was clearly disappointed when his tip halved before his eyes. Is sponging okay between teammates? And should you blackball the teammate from being invited to be in the team for next year's event?
Oh, fuck.
So, normally I would turn to our guest at this point, but I think maybe I should go to Chris.
Oh, God. I forgot that happened. Oh, that's very awkward. I'm very red right now. Thank God we're not on video. I completely forgot about this. So he's absolutely right about the gun, as anyone who shoots an older side-by-side knows, never take it to a clay day. But obviously this was the perfect clay day to take it to, because they had 2 gun-making apprentices ready to pick up the pieces for when it all fell apart at the end of the day.
I thought you were going to say never service a side-by-side, which is a philosophy I've followed for a long time.
Well, the thing was, it got even worse because they gave it back to me, having tightened up a couple of screws, and they said, yeah, you should be all right for a little bit. And Edward King, who sent this in? Was it Edward or Gary?
Yeah, Gary.
So Edward King, wwho of ASI, AYA Rizzini Importer, was in our team. He looked at it and was like, oh God, that's not going to last another 5 minutes. Let me take it back for you and I shall do a full repair job on it. Obviously, many hundreds of pounds later, after an invoice from Edward, thanks very much, I received the gun back. I need to have a word with Mr. King, because he did exactly the same thing to me when we were shooting at the end of last season. So this is what he does. He goes on shoot days. He finds someone with an old side-by-side, gives it a wiggle and goes, oh, it's a bit off the face. You better send it back with me. And it pays for his shooting just like that. It's really clever. And if he can find 2 or 3 people, he makes a profit out of going shooting. I see. So, yeah, I did. I don't know why. I had one of those moments like you do, George, regularly, where you have no cash on you. And I sponged some money off Gary. I had no idea that this person might have seen me take 20 quid from Gary and then split it into 2 tenors to give to the 2 people from the Gunmakers Trust. Ouch.
So I've got an additional dilemma to add to Brutus's initial dilemmas, and I'm going to ask Hugo. It seems to me, Hugo, that my co-host needs to make amends.
100%.
What can he do?
Oh,
this is painful. Listening to this
I
in real time.
I have to say, I am so bloody happy that you didn't come to me first, because as not knowing who it was, I might have gone a bit harsh. But 100%, the poor apprentice. What would have been wrong giving another 20 quid? I think for such extensive repairs, Chris. I don't know, but
well, the problem was I probably would have done. I just didn't have any cash, so I was pleased to have fine 20 and then be able to swap it for 2 tens.
We've all got there on shoot days where you sort of come to do the bit at the end of the day and you go, oh God.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think there's something different about that on a game day. I feel like, I don't know, you end up the night before a shoot, if you're driving somewhere, you end up driving like 20 miles the wrong way to go and find a cash point because you should have picked it up at the service station earlier in the journey, that type of thing. But before a clay day, I don't know, the same thing just didn't cross my mind, and I was like, I'll be fine, whatever. Then just obviously fluffed it. But yeah, sorry, back to you.
Yeah, and then the gun break. Well, you're speaking to a man that broke 3 guns last season, so I do know the pain, and 2 of them weren't mine. So,
oh well, if you're going to break a gun, break somebody else's. I mean, for sure.
Well, I started by breaking mine, and then I borrowed the Godfather's number 1 and broke that, and then borrowed the number 2 and broke that as well. So all ejectors.
Oh really?
Yes.
Oh god, that's not cheap.
I snapped mine in about sort of December time, and then caused his number 1 to start double ejecting every time he pulled the first trigger. So even if you just had one shot, it was chucking everything out. And then on the 1st of February, I can remember it quite well, shot a particularly good jackdaw, and was so happy with myself and broke the gun, and the ejector flew the other way, and there was another apology coming.
Oh, that's so... I hate that feeling. That's happened as well. Because ejectors, the actual ejector bit, flies quite a long way out of a gun when it shears off, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the problem with all of us side-by-side people, isn't it, I suppose?
That happened to me after about, I think it must have been the second shot on the second drive of quite a big day at Beaver Castle once. And I just wanted to cry. There's me sort of half loading one barrel for the rest of the drive. Very frustrating.
Well, I seem to think we were shooting on some quite peaty ground when I broke my gun, and we were having a fantastic day. And I can remember a couple of my good friends coming over to me, and I've never seen them smile so much. The fact that my gun had broken, and we all sort of got in a line searching for the part of the ejector we couldn't find, and I'm sure my friend Nick or Josh absolutely just rubbed it in, just found it, and just kicked it into the dirt a bit more, just to make the repair job that bit more expensive.
Guns never break just before the whistle, do they? They always break right at the beginning of a drive.
Yeah, absolutely.
Go on then, George.
Well, I think a small donation to the Gunmakers Charitable Trust, I think would probably make amends.
So my dad's the chairman of it, and gives
all the more reason.
A lot of his time to the charity, and I will happily. It would be even more enjoyable if I could donate the money and give it to him in a sort of, I don't know,
give him a giant check for a tenner.
yes. Oh, that's a good idea. I'll get a slap if I do that. That's worth it.
Good. Well, apologies for that, Chris. I've been sitting on that for a really long time, and I thought now was the time to bring it out.
Well, the good news is that about a week ago, I got an email from these two saying for our team at the clay shoot at Sandringham again this summer. So I obviously haven't been blackballed, which we're going to first week of August. That Nick Holt runs and does quite a good job for a bunch of charities on the day. Always good fun, that one.
Moving on then, Chris.
We have Brutus. I told him before we go any further. Talk me through Brutus.
Well, Brutus famously stabbed Caesar in the back, didn't he? Which is what I've just done to you.
Very good. Okay. And this unpopular opinion comes from someone that George has called Greta. Greta says, if I see another plastic or paper cup being used for shoot day 11s, I will scream. Why do people use them? You see them all over YouTube. Can we really not afford to buy a dozen or so mugs and glasses for serving him? In all seriousness, shooting is under pressure from all angles, and as such, we should be showing the world that we are doing everything we can do to be sustainable and set a good example. Plus, it looks effing awful. My opinion is that someone should do the washing up and not use throwaway cups.
Oh, wow, yeah.
It's a very niche, unpopular opinion, this. But it's very appropriate for you, Hugo. Shoot day 11s.
That's something I've not thought about, and that's a bit of a moral maze going on there.
I tell you what, hold the sustainable angle to one side for a second, and just debate the merits of plastic and cardboard cups versus a decent mug on a shoot day.
Well, plastic I really wouldn't agree with, but cardboard I was sort of thinking down the hold on a sec, they're compostable, and we, in where we have our 11s, we've got 4 or 5 different bins, tins, cardboard, food waste, napkins, all that, so we can split it all out. But I suppose so on that point I would disagree, but then actually how sustainable are cardboard cups is a question I wouldn't know the answer to. So
not as sustainable as using mugs.
Absolutely not. But I suppose when you're out, in the field, and if you've got some really rough, bumpy ground, you're going to be breaking a lot of mugs just having them in the back of the Land Rover, aren't you? And
that's something I've not considered.
I quite like a paper cup of hot soup. I think that's quite nice.
Warms the hands up a bit quicker than a mug as well.
Yeah, I don't hate it. I prefer not to have a paper cup with slow gin in it, though, or champagne.
Yeah.
No.
And I don't know if you agree with me on this. Tea out of a paper cup, it doesn't matter how well you've made the tea, it is always rubbish.
And polystyrene.
Yeah.
I'm with you on that. And actually, for that reason, have a stash of syndicate mugs. I've got a cupboard full of mugs that just are no longer in use. Odds and sods. I'm sure loads of people have got mugs that they just don't use. Send them all down the syndicate. Leave them in the syndicate hut but you do need to take them home at the end of the day and wash them up. Ooh. But I do love it when someone arrives with one of those wicker baskets with the sort of champagne glasses around the edge, and they go, "Here you go, guys," and they bring a bottle, and they do that for 11s. It makes all the difference with everyone doing their little bit.
I did see a very good idea on that point last year. I just remembered Adam at Hadley Game and Sporting. He has made had made some metal mugs, so obviously they won't break like a porcelain mug. I only just remembered that. I thought they were a very good idea, and nicely branded up, stackable, absolutely brilliant, and very good for warming the hands up as well.
Yeah, I was going to say that the real solution is to get some nice branded mugs made up for your syndicate, or for your shoot, which I think could be quite nice. Particularly if one member of the syndicate takes it upon themselves to provide them. I reckon you can get what you need. Probably need 40. Run off by some company online for no money at all.
And also they'll get nicked every week, so you probably need closer to 100, don't you?
Yeah, probably true.
It's lacking a bit of charm. So Toby, Toby at the Isle of Muck.
Yes,
he's been on our podcast before. He's got these mugs that look like they were found on a Time Team episode, and they're battered all over the place, and they're quite weighty. And the first time I picked one up, I thought they were just straight lead, and I thought, I'm going to die before I finish drinking this drink. I don't actually know what they are. They must be the original tankards made out of like pewter or something.
Pewter, yeah.
And they've got all this charm and character, but you can really taste a lot of metal in your first sip, and it kind of comes.
What are you having out of these pewter tankards?
So that's where it gets really interesting, because he serves a rusty nail, which, in my opinion, is a disgusting drink, but my dad loves it. And so if you mix it with a bit of pewter in your first sip, I find it sort of vaguely acceptable because it's still disgusting and therefore goes down.
Yeah, I think the only other thing I want to say about this is I think that it depends a bit on what sort of shoot you are. I agree plastic's probably not the thing, but if you're on a fairly, rough and ready, no nonsense farm shoot syndicate knockabout type thing, I think it'd be a bit weird if somebody whipped out the champagne flutes at 11s. Somehow a paper cup feels more fitting. And I can totally see that there's a lot of work goes into a shoot day, and maybe the prospect of washing up 40 mugs is just a step too far, and that the paper cup just keeps the whole thing going. Rather than being the straw that breaks the camel's back. I don't think I mind too much.
At the end of the day, when you get to 11s and you've had a couple of decent drives and you get served something nice, I don't think, apart from your tea point, which I absolutely am with you on, I think that, you're right. It probably doesn't really matter. But it is nice when someone brings a bottle of champagne and whips out their little champagne flutes out the boot of the car. No one's ever complaining when that happens.
No. Okay, so unpopular or popular?
Hugo?
I've got no idea what the answer to popular or unpopular is. I was just actually thinking what we use metal tankards that are little trophies from the Godfather's car trialing days that are quite good fun, and they're obviously a washing up job. But yeah, I would say not unpopular. I think it's something we should be thinking about.
Okay, Chris?
Yeah, and I'm not so. I think obviously the plastic cup days are kind of gone, so I'm not so worried about the unsustainable angle too much on the basis of cardboard. But I'm more thinking about the experience on the shoot day, and enough people have got Charles and Diana mugs in the back of their cupboard that they can rock out from all those years ago. So I think, I don't think this is unpopular.
I'm inclined to agree. I think we're probably saying that this is a popular opinion.
So the message of the pod is up your mug game.
Yeah, we want mugs. Generally, but we won't get too upset as long as whatever's in the paper cup is all right.
Apart from it, as long as it's not tea.
Good.
I'm glad. Do you know what's so nice about this? In the week of all the election chat, we are discussing the big issues.
Well, do you know what? I nearly at the top of the show, we normally have a little bit of a chit chat, and I wondered if I was going to bring up Big Nigel's video that came out yesterday. And I decided against it.
You just have. You just have.
But I'm not going to say anything else about it. And that's it. We're going to move on. So Greta and Brutus, and now you, Hugo, are the newest members of the most noble order of the Garters, and will very soon be in receipt of a set of the much coveted Guns on Pegs podcast shooting sock garters. If you too have got a shooting confession, quandary, or a query that you'd like us and our guests to help you with, or if you'd like to share an unpopular opinion, or you'd like to tell us about a great drive with a great name, or a forgotten drive, or if you've got a shooting hero to nominate and you would like a set of garters, drop us an email to pod@gunsonpegs.com.
And we've got a reminder, and you have not got long left. George, when does this go out?
Well, this goes out, first week of July.
No idea.
It's first week of July this one goes out.
Okay, when are we going to put a deadline? We want a date for input. So we are going to discuss at the game fair, 4:00 on the Saturday afternoon at the game fair.
In the Game Fair Theatre, no less.
On the stage in the Game Fair Theatre, we are going to discuss the correspondence that has come in relation to the shooting hero recent discussion that we've had. So we need a deadline for that. And I think a week before the game fair.
Yeah, I think so. So what's that? Is that the 17th, something like that?
It is around the 21st, right?
Okay.
Deadline.
Cool.
Shooting heroes. Nominate a real shooting hero, someone who goes above and beyond to share shooting or the benefits of shooting, aspects of shooting with those who may not otherwise be involved. So people that are pushing shooting out. I mean, Hugo's a classic candidate for this, but people that are people that are pushing shooting out to others and extolling the virtues of shooting, they can win a day's fishing on the test or a peg on a shoot day, and that shoot day will be a little bit in discussion with them, a bit of a choice actually. But very, very exciting competition. All you got to do is nominate a friend. Send them in to pod@gunsonpegs.com. Send us in a little email. Please don't be afraid. The stories are what matters, because a lot of them are going to get discussed. There will only be one winner, or there'll be two winners, sorry. But it's the stories that matters. Just send them in.
Right. So, Hugo, let's talk about Game Glutton. First, when did you start the account? How long's it been going?
I think, I can remember, it was the 31st of Jan this year it started up.
So really,
not long.
Really recently.
Really, yeah, very recently. Very recently. It's been in a pipeline for a little bit of time, but it's been one of those where I sort of, until the beginning of this year, I'm someone that was pretty anti-social media. I sort of thought it was, selling your soul and all of that, but yeah, there's a bit of a story behind it. I don't know really where you want me to start. If we go
back to the start,
yeah,
please. It's the story that matters.
Well, I mean, you go right back to sort of childhood for me. Was my father was such a passionate country sportsman. He worked for the Countryside Alliance voluntarily. Started up the ribeye clay shoot, and I can always remember as a kid, I can't remember how many people, 400 odd people there, 100 teams of 4, and the idea being you get a stake there, and he would always sort of get me to stand up there as a young kid and say, this is what it's all about. It's all about the next generation and protecting our sport with a Save Our Shooting campaign. And yeah, you've never met a man more passionate about shooting. And I can remember when when he got ill when I was about 17, and we knew he didn't have very long left, he sort of turned to me, and I was in that 17-year-old reprobate stage of my life, and going against, trying to be a rebel, and he said you really need to find a passion in life, and that was when so Paul, my sort of surrogate father, who was his best friend, sort of took me in and got me on the game farm, and I thought, oh, bloody hell, this is obviously in the blood, and I can get passionate. And I got into cooking when I was very young. The old man said to me, sort of when I was about 10 or 12, he said, if you can cook, you'll always have friends. So, and it's just, I've got a couple of them, and it's turned out to be true. So my passion was always with sort of cooking, and then with the game farming side of things, when I started doing that, I absolutely loved it. It's very satisfying to sort of bring something on, and go all the way from having the parent stock and grading them out, and then the egg laying, the incubation, rearing them on, and putting them out in the wood, and then it was sort of last year when I was hit the big 30 and had a few thoughts about what I want to do, and I thought I really actually I got very bored of going on shoot days and seeing or hearing people say, oh, I don't like eating game, and it's a classic, and I think that is dying out, but I heard it a lot growing up, and dispelling the myths, and I've been cooking it for years, and I've never had an issue, and I absolutely love it. And I think if you get it right, which is very easy, and I'll come on to that later, but so about 5 years ago, I started taking the shoot 11sies on and started cooking up some stuff, and everyone was like, oh, this is bloody good, why don't you sell a little bit of it and all that? And I was like, oh, well, no, we just keep it to the shoot. And then last year I thought, oh, well, actually let's go and follow the food passion and keep it going. I just love what people like Louisa and Leon and stuff are doing at Eat Wild, and thought food's quite on trend at the minute, and I'll jump on board, try and start a food thing up. And it was some friends of mine that said to me, you're quite quick at dressing a bird, or getting all the meat off a bird, can you come and do a little demo? And I went and did a little demo at their house in the garage for a few friends, and they were like, oh, why don't you put this on Instagram? And that was sort of where the whole Instagram came from. And it's sort of growing slowly from there.
I'm not surprised they told you to do it. I must say, you're very good at it, because it does take quite some skill to sort of get that across to a camera and then edit it in the right way and make it engaging throughout the video. It's hard, and you do it really well.
Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you. It's been a big... I actually... sort of like, not in prep for this, but went and had a look back at my sort of first couple of videos. You thought, oh god, just like, trying to hold a camera and toss a frying pan and all that. But it's a long learning curve. But
that's like us in our first podcast,
I can't even listen.
I
I can't even listen to the first couple. They make me feel so. I just sort of think, what on earth are we doing? But no, I mean, Chris is right. You are very, very engaging on camera, and you do a great job of it. But I'm guessing, from those early videos, you've upgraded some kit and learnt a few lessons.
I really haven't. I've got a new iPhone, and I've got a stand and a microphone, and I'm quite tight. And stingy, so I'm sure there's all sorts of lights and everything that you could get, and I'm sure it will come one day. But for the minute, I just stick to doing what I'm doing. I sort of enjoy it, and it's a good promotion for the business. So.
You must have quite good instincts then, because Chris mentioned your trademark pinny with the aubergine, and I've noticed you start all your videos, or a lot of the videos, with the same phrase and that kind of thing. Yeah. So is that just instinctive, or have you got some?
I don't know what it's. I don't know where that's sort of. I was sort of brought up with the P's and Q's and the manners, so I think a good evening's always very nice. And when I was managing on the farm, I sort of, everyone was team, and I was all about building a team. So I would say team or gang or anything like that. And I don't know, that sort of stuck. And then what's the other one that everyone at home takes the mick out of? Bloody good mix as well. Everything needs to. I might even just start saying BGM or something like that. But
you have to get bloody good mix into every video. George is absolutely right. And whether you've done it by design or not, those little things become, as you say, like the little trademarks that people look for.
What was funny is actually when I sort of started in February, obviously I have no idea. I've never done anything like this before. Grew up beef farming, then went into game farming, and I've never done any public speaking or anything, stuff like that. And I can remember I was at a party or something back at the beginning of the year, and this girl, she'd had a couple of beers, but she's just being honest. She's like, "Oh, I like your videos, but you are very monotonous." I thought, oh god, you've actually got to have a think about this. And it's because it was that sort of whole like learning curve of, I was trying to commentate on the video I'd recorded, and now it's I know that I need to watch it through, write something down, and go for it. But it's good fun. And going back to the apron, is I absolutely miss the connotations behind it, because I obviously get it, but the reason behind it is my absolute love of cooking. As a kid, my parents would say, or cousins would say, I was absolutely addicted to watching videos of Gordon Ramsay, whether it's Hell's Kitchen or Kitchen Nightmares or The F Word, and that was sort of where I learned to cook, was YouTube. And his first restaurant was Aubergine, so hence the apron. And obviously nowadays in the modern society, it's got different connotations. But I am trying to get my own aprons made up, so that it will be gone soon. But it's
they've got to have an aubergine on them, though.
Yeah, I think they do. We'll have to work it into the logo.
So that would be the dream collab then, would be Gordon Ramsay.
Oh no, I'd be absolutely petrified to meet him. I've got no training whatsoever. Actually, tell a lie. I've done one cooking course last year down at Vale House Kitchen with Bod, and it was the smoking and charcuterie course with, is it Stephen Lamb? And it was absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. I learned so much from there. So anyone who's really interested in it, they do venison butchery courses, all that stuff. Get a Vale House Kitchen, really a top place to go. And
so where have you learnt your cooking skills from then? Just osmosis?
Genuinely.
Really?
I genuinely mean it. When I started with cooking, my father was always cooking something. It was dreadful. It was always dreadful what he cooked. But we used to go shooting all through the week and whatever, and every bird would get hung up on the washing line. And then the end of Sunday was my job to dress them out, and it just put me off for for life was these green birds that had gone manky, and I'd be pulling the guts out of them, holding my nose, and then he'd put one strip of streaky bacon, chuck them in the oven for an hour and a half, and then tell me we're eating God's food, and I go, oh God.
It's so true. There's far too many people who do that.
And I just, and then I somehow didn't let it put me off. He'd make some and he had no sense of flavor or anything anything like that. But for some reason, I absolutely loved it as a kid, and I think it gave me some iron guts. I remember on the shoot where I am now, the old form was that one gun would do the dinner every day, and we had been he'd loaded up the car with this. It was supposed to be a Thai green pheasant curry that actually made some people, by the time it got to the shoot, it'd been there in the car for 3 or 4 days, going through all the danger zones, and then sat in the bottom oven. I think a couple of people got such bad food poisoning they missed their flights the next day, and they were supposed to be going on holiday.
Oh my God.
And somehow I didn't get put off.
But so what you've had is a very deep and effective training in what not to do.
Exactly. And actually, and proof that being well hung isn't everything.
I think we might have just got our episode title.
Being well hung isn't everything. I love it.
The well hung episode. So when you're thinking about the recipes that you want to share, what are the ones what's your thought process? What's the philosophy behind it?
That is a very interesting question. To be honest, my thought philosophy is my main aim is when I sort of started doing what I was doing was just, people always think it's difficult. Everyone thinks game's difficult. They're like, oh, it just dries out, and it isn't. It really isn't. I want everyone to see it as it's just a different version of chicken. So realistically, half of the recipes, and this has been brutally honest, we're all food's so on trend. You just go on Instagram, you scroll through a few reels, and I mean, all of mine is cooking feeds, and I would just look at something and go, well, I think that would be a good flavor build with pheasant. There was a lime curry I did the other day that just literally was like, that came off Instagram, someone doing it with chicken thighs, and I was just like, well, I'd take that and that out of it and put that in it, and then it's perfect to go with pheasant. And I absolutely love it because it gives me something to think about all day as how and I just get these random ideas, and I text people and go, oh God, how have I not thought of this before? And it's great fun. But
do you cook them a few times and then do a video, or do you just get the video and then just go for it straight away?
No. So there's plenty of filming on my phone that's not made it to Instagram. Well, I'll always film it because if it goes really well, then why wouldn't you? It's like sometimes the practice one goes better than anything. I actually last weekend when we were down at the Haney shoot, the whiskey sauce with the haggis bonbons I didn't have any whiskey, so I used drambuie, and the sauce was disgusting. And I was like, sorry guys. I've absolutely cocked this, but just smile for the camera. No, so if it's no good, then it doesn't go on. And then I used to get really panicky, but I did that the pheasant Big Mac the other night, and got there, and my friend was there. I was like, have you not got any cheese? And I was like, I don't eat a lot of McDonald's. So I was like, does a Big Mac have cheese? And they're like, yeah, obviously. I was like, oh God. It's like, no, haven't got any of that. So
do you know what? When watching that, I didn't spot that you missed the cheese. It didn't need it.
And now I've announced it to the shooting world. There we go. Whoops. Put cheese on here.
Well, to a small proportion of the shooting world anyway. But I think it's really interesting because you do, I think, from what I can gather, you're doing quite a lot of stuff that's, not scary.
No, hopefully not.
To anybody. It's just as you say, it's a recipe, and you could equally be using chicken or beef in the case of venison or whatever. Like, it's just a recipe, no scary processes or anything like that. But then you've also been doing, and I guess this maybe is a result of your experience at Vale House Kitchen, which is you've been doing some sort of jerky, and you're smoking things and brining them and this and that and the other. And I have a feeling that a lot of people who maybe aren't into game would perhaps find that a bit daunting, but possibly game shots, people who are into game are a bit more adventurous with that kind of thing and maybe be interested in giving it a go.
Well, so Veil certainly helped out there. I started that a few years ago. So when I sort of started doing what I was doing with the local shoots, so what I do is sort of 11s packs for local shoots, and the smoked pheasant really was what kicked that off. So I sort of got into brining a few years ago. I can't remember how I got into it, probably a recipe somewhere. And then I started reading about it. And then I realized that all restaurants, if you're eating chicken in a decent restaurant, it's been brined. Most meat has been brined in a restaurant because I won't bore with the details, but it makes meat moist and it makes it very difficult to overcook. And then, it was the game fair 2 years ago or whatever. I came across these smokers, Bradley smokers, and I was like, I just looked at them and you know, my intention at the game fair was to buy an air rifle, and I ended up coming home with a smoker for the same money. And I was like, I wonder if you could hot smoke pheasant breast. And then I started doing it, and I was like, oh, this is brilliant. And now, you know, I'm providing packs of smoked pheasant to all the local shoots for their 11s, and I do a multitude of flavors to people's will, and it's a great way of eating it. And people just go, and once it's brined, as long as you don't chuck it in the smoker for 10 hours and leave it, it's a hot smoke, it's quick, you get a little bit of smokiness. I've done a lot of experimenting with it, but it's a fantastic way to eat it.
I was going to say crash course. Make sure you get onto a crash course for those that don't know about this, because this is just a quick takeaway is crucial.
Yeah, well, the crash course is get your brining right. That I've got videos on it. Brining is the most important bit, and also, especially with shot game, is if you've got blood pockets or anything like that, it will, and there's a hole for it to escape, it will pull all of that out there. So, and blood's really bitter. You know, there's that old-fashioned thing of all the blood's where all the flavors at. It's a load of crap. Actually, especially in poultry, blood's very bitter. And then not being scared to have pheasant pink in the middle, slightly pink in the middle. You know, I think sort of 60. I do everything on touch, but that's experience. I think if you're starting out, get a temperature probe. Once you hit 60, 62 degrees internal, that thing is safe to eat. You know, it hasn't got the build up of disease that you get in commercial poultry houses. So,
yeah, interesting. And so, how are you serving the smoked pheasant then? Is that just thinly sliced?
Thinly sliced. I don't think it needs the chutney, but people like dipping things, don't they? So an apricot and mango chutney is very nice. I love to say I make that myself, but Mr. T.E.S.C.O. does a very finest version of one that actually goes so well with all of it. And actually with a, you know, I do some plainer flavors for the tastings and tours up at the vineyard, and it goes very well with the wine as well. Just a nice charcuterie dish there. And then you know, and then moving into I did a video the other day about what do we do with the stuff that's shot up. And, you know, back when I was growing up, you know, you baked it up and minced it up and fed it to the dogs. But I don't think that's a way forward. So now I mince it up and feed it to everyone on the shoot day and add a bit of flavour to it. And yeah, there's a bit of shot in there. And I think that's something that if you're eating game, you know, you kind of have to deal with. But it's a great way of getting that stuff used, and you know, just having a mincer at home or a grinder, whatever. You can even use a food processor, whatever you want. It's working out how to use that all of that meat as easy as possible, as opposed to getting a bird and looking at it and going, oh well, that's knackered.
Yeah, a mincer I cannot recommend highly enough to anyone. I love getting the mincer out and making a terrible mess in the kitchen, but you end up, I mean, burgers and chili and all sorts of, you know, the options are so, you know, I will put perfectly decent pheasant breast through the mincer. I was going to ask because I like having mince.
I got given one for my birthday. So
did you?
It's the summer, I'm going to wait. But I was always wondering, why would you mince a pheasant breast? But then you're saying that this is a good thing, like as in, and that's just a variation, right?
Well, obviously, I want everyone in the shooting industry to be eating pheasant.
Yeah.
And that's something I'm working on big time because I still think there's work to be done there. But when you're going to, if I've got friends that have never tried pheasant before, I don't want to fry up a pheasant breast that's got 8 shot holes in it and is full of blood and
Because
they're going to be crunched on there because
Yeah.
it doesn't look right. And I know that is a factor. And
well, the eye eats first.
I record a lot of what I process, and I grade everything out into. I've got a few different grades, but if I was going to simplify it down, it would be A and B grade. I've got another couple of grades beyond, like completely undamaged is what I use for smoking, so it looks brilliant. But an A grade's got minimal damage on. B grade, a lot of damage on it. Those B grades, if you go and cook that up and serve it to someone, you're already at a loss. Even with brining, it's still going to have a lot of blood in it. It's going to be very bitter. So let's mince that up. Let's get some flavour in there, and let's move it on. And honestly, I'd never, until Tuesday night, I'd never done a pheasant smash burger before. But honestly, I could not recommend. I know I did it as a Big Mac recipe, but I ate one on its own, and honestly, just even with salt and pepper, absolutely delicious.
Really?
Yeah, so good.
So you're mincing up the smashed up breast, because this has always bothered me when I take the breast, if I'm taking breasts out of pheasant in whatever way, or even if you're roasting a whole pheasant, right, and you've got a part of it which is not in great shape. If I've got people with me that don't eat game, I'm like turning the bird round, cutting it the other way, making sure I have that bit and someone else gets the nicer bit. But it would be so much easier to do something with them, like mincing it. So you're mincing it up. You're taking, and you could take good breast as well. And if you're just doing this at home, mince it up. And then what else are you doing then to make that really basic burger?
Well, so one thing I've done a lot of experimenting around with this, and it you get very complicated, but you've got to get some fat in there. So I used to do my own pigs at home, so I've run out of a fat supply at the moment, but pork fat is very good to add, and I'd say the same with venison mince if you've got
because it's so lean and dry.
Around us, there's so many roe around us at the minute. They're so overpopulated. Carcass quality is absolutely terrible around us because there's just an abundance. But that's another conversation that you guys have spoken about plenty of times before. So pork fat and getting that in there. If I'm using breast meat to make mince, I'm going at 25 to 30% of pork fat in there.
Pork fat,
Of pork fat. So I've got local butchers very friendly terms with, so I can get hold of that. They don't like giving the fat away because obviously that's the best part of their sausages. If I'm using leg meat, I go at 20%. And as the season goes on, so you think they're laying down a lot more fat come January, once you start seeing breasts with fat on, then drop it down to 20%. But you've got to just get a bit of moisture in there. And I'm not afraid to say it. It's great. You can go and make it without it, but it is just better and more appealing if you put a little bit of pork fat in there.
And if you, if you haven't got the butcher to go to, can you get away with like a load of streaky bacon and just up in the quantity?
I would go for rineless pork belly slices. You can get in most, as long as you're buying British, but most supermarkets will do rineless pork belly slices. And have a look through the packs, find the ones with the most fat on them. And actually, they're usually easy to find because people that are buying pork belly slices to cook are looking for the ones with the least amount of fat on. So you've probably got a nice catch-22 there.
Yeah, nice. And the other top tip for mincing, Chris, is to make sure that everything is sort of partially frozen before you put it through the mincer, because it just goes through the mincer that much better.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And if you don't, you sort of end up with pate rather than mince.
Messy. And also, if you're doing a lot of it, the grinding gears will get incredibly hot, and quite quickly. So having it par frozen keeps all the gears from getting too hot, and you actually start cooking the mince if you go. That's only if you. But
it's dangerous to obviously take it to a temperature and then bring it back and then up and then down and
Well, yes.
Okay, so you're saying I shouldn't be between you.
No, but it is. I just think. I think part. So a lot of my stuff, I paraphrase it and get it sort of just so that it's still got a bit of malleability. But a good friend of mine, local butcher, gave me his old industrial mincer. So when I do 20 odd kilos at a time, that's when you need it all really cold. And that's where I'll have it frozen down. And that thing will obviously take anything. But
do you go so far as to putting the bits of the mincer in the freezer before you start as well?
Never been that far, but that's a cracking idea I hadn't thought of.
You've obviously done this.
Yeah,
I have. Yeah.
It's a very strange suggestion that someone with a bit of knowledge is using, but
well, so I think my next project, I got this cold smoker a couple of weeks ago that I mentioned. I did the trout that we caught. I caught down with Tarquin the other day, and it was bloody excellent. So obviously, I'm now thinking, well, what else can I cold smoke? Obviously, you can cold smoke a trout. That's great. I don't do that much trout fishing, so I'm not likely to have any more trout in the near future.
Despite being where you are in Hampshire.
Despite in fact, I say that I'm actually going fishing next weekend, and then I'm in Scotland fishing in 2 weeks' time. But I'm not killing any salmon, so have to hope there's a very stupid brown trout up there, and I might be able to bop that. But I'm obviously thinking, well, what else can I cold smoke? And I'm thinking, well, I can make bacon. And there's all sorts of stuff I could start doing. So, and I'm also a big fan of a sausage that's, I think, probably Hungarian in origin, called klobasa, which I think would be amazing with venison or probably with pheasant as well. And so it's a smoked sausage. So I'm thinking, okay, these are the next experiments. And I just think, I do think that if you're into wild meat, that kind of, I mean, smoking is such an ancient practice. It just feels like the right thing to do with it. I don't know why. It just feels sort of, I don't know, philosophically right.
Yeah, well,
just do it.
You're so right. Last season, some friends of mine had come back and he'd been lucky enough to go grouse shooting and on some fresh grouse, and he said, "Oh, just have a play around with these." And one thing I did, and it was a complete experiment that fortunately worked very well, was doing a sort of dry brine almost on a grouse breast, skinned grouse breast. Did a dry brine for a day, and then cold smoked it for 8 hours. And I think I can't remember, pecan or cherry or something like that. And then I brought it back to his for his shoot day. We served it up, and it was so tasty, but it was the texture element that got everyone, because it was almost like eating sashimi from the.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, I was a bit apprehensive about it, and then I sort of cut into it and I tried it, and I went, oh, actually that's really good. And I was a bit worried. I was like, am I going to make anyone ill here? Of course, no one gets ill because it's wild game. Like you'd be doing well to get ill off it.
Yeah.
And we had it, and it was absolutely delicious. And my biggest annoyance about the whole thing is I'm a terrible person for not writing down what I did. So I just got to go through the whole experiment again next year and actually write down what it was. But so have a go at that with a cold smoke.
Well, presumably from now on you'll have a video record.
Yeah, well that's the brilliant thing. Yeah. So
the other thing that struck me is that obviously you have a huge passion for game, for shooting, and for cooking in general, but the fact that you're not a professionally trained chef, it struck me that really pretty much anybody could be doing what you're doing and sharing the way that they prepare and eat their game, and that would probably go quite a long way to sort of normalizing the use of game a bit more amongst the shooting community. Seeing people seeing is believing, isn't it? And I think it's quite refreshing. We often see professionals. We've had Tim and we've had Kai on, and various other, and who else do we have? Mike Robinson. We've had on. These guys are professional chefs, Michelin-starred chefs in some cases, which maybe makes everybody think, oh well, actually maybe I can't do it.
Yeah, no, 100% agree, and that's I'd hope I don't want to put anyone off trying to do it. I get plenty of people saying, oh god, your videos just go too quickly, but unfortunately Instagram limits you to 1:30, and it is quite difficult, but you get the principle. I'd like to think that every recipe I'm putting up is attainable. There's no savage ingredients that you've got to go and try and find from some Oriental supermarket or anything like that. A lot of the stuff is in the cupboard. I try and make a lot of the stuff as quick as possible, because the biggest problem, I mean, the food, it's a much wider conversation. Something I'm very passionate about is how the entire food system is broken across the world since I mean, for anyone that hasn't read the book Ultra Processed People, like it's well worth a read.
My dad won't stop talking about it. Honestly, we're on holiday and he's literally at every meal straight into some.
I think every time I've seen him for the last 6 months, he's mentioned it. Normally, as I'm tucking into an enormous pizza.
Yeah. but it's true, and we have this ability with the world we walk in, we've got this amazing food source. It's incredibly healthy. We won't go into the facts, but we all know, how much more iron there is in venison than beef, and how much more protein there is in pheasant. We've got access to all this stuff. Let's share it with everyone. And I think when you make it easy and people start cooking, I've got people quite often, cook one of the recipes and then post it back on Instagram and go, oh, is this, if they're cooking that for a friend that's got nothing to do with the shooting world, and they go, oh, that's delicious, then you've got another convert there, don't you?
Absolutely.
And I'm actually really loving the feedback I'm getting on messages from people that've got nothing to do with shooting, and then I'm organising an event next week, and one of the musicians playing there he's nothing to do with the shooting world, and he said, look, can you let me know when the shooting season starts? I want to come and learn where I can get it from and stuff like that. And I'm like, this is exactly what it's all about, guys. Like,
it now makes absolute sense why we said at the start that you're going to be working with Louisa and Leon at Eat Wild, which is the game marketing board for for game to the outward world, and it now makes total sense how that's come about, and you're absolutely right to be involved. So what sort of stuff are you thinking you're going to be doing with them?
Well, so I was having a chat with Louise the other day, and just basically, for me, I want to help out wherever possible I can. So whether it's at shows or whatever, I'm happy, passionate just to teach people. I mean, I was talking to Louisa, and I'm sure most people probably saw on the socials the other day, they did the Children's Day, and I can't off the top of my head remember where it at. They had 1,700.
It was up north, wasn't it?
It was up north. They had 1,700 kids there. How amazing is that? 1,700 children are trying pheasant and venison and all of this food. And obviously Leon does an amazing job with his insane recipes. And actually, on that note, Louisa has given me some exciting news for everyone. And this has...
Oh, a scoop.
Oh, I've got a scoop.
We're going to do a scoop.
Yeah. So...
stand by journalism.
So the Kantar research has come back, and last year game sales are up 15.2%
in a year.
So that's mad, isn't it? How epic is that?
That's amazing.
That's so good.
That's huge.
Yeah. Sorry, Louisa, for stealing your thunder.
Well, no, but I mean,
you did say I could do it.
Well done, Louisa, because
yeah, no, absolutely,
it can't be unlinked,
and that's 100% why she deserves your shoot day. That's on offer. She genuinely didn't ask me to say that either. It's just my opinion.
She might have been nominated, but hey ho, there's 2 prizes up for grabs.
So there's a lot of good news stuff there, and I'm happy to get involved. My main passion is obviously just everything we do, and I did that series the other day when I was taking up salmon fishing first time round with Gilly
yes,
UK, and
you were at Bray Langwell.
Yeah, I was, and I generally still think they're all lying. I don't believe salmon exists, but it turns out they caught sort of 12 or something for the week after we left.
Well, let me tell you, my brother is heading to Bray Langwell this weekend.
Oh, is he?
With a bunch of his mates, and I know the people who were fishing there last week, and they had 7 on Monday morning.
Yeah, I know, because the group chat's still thriving, and I was sort of stood there with obviously it's the first time I'm passionate about all that, and Gilly UK, the clothing brand we went with, we stood there, and one of the chaps I was with, the guy called Jamie, I was just there trying to learn how to do the casting thing, and he's like, yeah, you get, and I said, I just think you're all lying, and he said, this is my 8th year coming here, and the first 7 years coming fishing with the Gilly crew, and my first 7 years were all blanks. No one caught any fish. And I was like, surely he must have just thought it was all. He was like, I thought it was all a big lie. And then he was on his own, got a bite. And as my good friend George said to me when I was sort of there, and I was like, he was obviously so uninterested. He knew that the water was holding no fish. And I'm there thinking that anyone could be the next one. I go, what happens if a fish bites? He turned to me and just went, sheer panic.
Well, I mean, Bray Lang. I mean, the Carron is a lovely river, but it is a spate river. You do the water does have to be absolutely right, but when the water is right, you can have a great time there. It's a lovely, lovely place.
It ignites more passions, and actually, it's going to come on the Instagram tomorrow. But I'm signed up with Off the Table, which is from Wild Fish. So yeah, definitely going for that. And they've got some great success stories at the minute as well. Butcombe Pubs have just signed up to get farm salmon off the table.
Brilliant.
So that's 66 more restaurants without farm salmon. And they've got over 300 chefs now.
We're doing some stuff with Silver Scale at the moment. The guys who are doing the onshore salmon in Iceland, which look, I mean, it seems to be going great guns, and it tastes brilliant, and you feel good eating it.
Yeah, we that was the first. So Tarquin's book launch.
Yes,
Patrick Mavros. Was that 2 months ago? A month, 6 weeks ago.
Months ago. So yeah.
That was the sort of first time, and there's the salmon canapes going around. And I just thought, oh no! And then you read the card, and I'd not heard of it before, and I was like, oh god, the first time for I don't know 5 years or something. I had to drop it, and I think it's all brilliant stuff. It's all brilliant stuff. And
so, what's the plan with Eat Wild then?
So get on board. Do whatever I can. I think I'll certainly leave that up to Louisa with where I fit in. But we've got a couple of shows coming up. Certainly doing the butchery demos, and I'm just very, very keen to get as many people involved as possible. You know, where we're doing these food shows. Can remember a while ago you had Louisa on, and she was talking. You know, they did some show, and people were like, "Oh, what game is it? You know, hockey or football or stuff." And that's where I sort of think I thrive, because I love doing the show stuff and chatting to people and talking about game, and I think if you took your life on social media, you would think that everyone in the world is anti the country sports. I think realistically we've got probably 5% of the country are like us and they absolutely love it and are passionate. 5% of the country are avidly against us, and then 90% of people probably really don't care. And I think if you're chatting to that 5%, then you're...
Which is what social media aims to do.
Personally, in my opinion, is don't bother. Just really don't bother.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, it's like trying to have an argument with a vegan. If they're doing it on militant purposes, just don't bother. Just walk away. But the 90% of guys that really don't care, they're the guys we want to get on side.
Yeah. And everyone that tries game is a potential friend of shooting. And that's the key point.
Well, that's what shooting's all about. The end market is we are producing a food product. So moving forward, you know, we've got to. So it's great. I feel really lucky that I'm going to be able to get to work with, you know, Louisa, Leon, and stuff at the Eat Wild team, because it's that end market, and that is what we're driving, and there's great opportunity for it. And there's also, you know, we've got this big thing to think about, you know, a lot of it goes to Europe, and that's either going to stop, or we all know the arguments there. We've got to create these markets. So yeah, it's exciting times.
Well, good luck.
Here.
And I'm really glad that they've got you on board, because I'm excited.
Thank you very much.
Right. Am I going to do this bit then for a change?
Go on.
So the way we like to finish these podcasts off, Hugo, as you know, is to ask our guests to describe their dream last ever day out shooting. So the extinction level event asteroid hits tomorrow. Your affairs are in order. Your loved ones and enemies are reconciled. Your dogs are fed and the tomatoes are watered. Your last day begins how?
Begins how? I know exactly what I'm doing for my desert island shoot. So I'm going to be very boring. I know people travel all around and go back in time, but I'm not necessarily going back in time, but I'm going to bring someone back from time. I'd love to bring my old man back for a day and be at the shoot at Wolverton, where we are in Worcestershire at the moment. And I would love to bring him back for the day, but not give him the gun.
You're not going to make him cook, are you?
No. Well, this is where I've gone. I mean, so I take my day every year, sort of around December time, and it started when I was in my early 20s, and it was always called Young Boys Day because we were the young boys there, and we still call it the Boys Day now, and whatever. And it's great groups of mates. You know, I've got a lot of my local mates. I've got a few of my old ag college friends and stuff like that, and we do tend to have a very good giggle, and it's a very fun day. And I'd certainly want to keep all of those guys. And I was thinking through, I was like, well, you know, I'd have the old man there to shoot captain us all, but he wouldn't be allowed the gun because on his last ever day shooting was the beaters day at this shoot, February the 1st, 2011, and he was said, you know, only about out of the 20 odd beaters, only about 6 of them brought guns, and the old man said, "Oh well, we want to get some of the cockbirds on the ground, so I'll take the gun out the back." And he put all the guns out, and he was told in no uncertain terms, you know, just don't go and shoot half the bag or whatever. Well, anyway, I think there was something like 57 birds for the beaters day, and he had shot 35 of them or something like that.
Was this his last day shooting?
That was his last day shooting.
God, that's amazing.
And actually, it was quite funny. My godfather Paul, he mentioned it in his eulogy. He said, as a punishment in the pub later on, godfather bought a pint of orange juice and poured it all over the old man as you shouldn't have done that. You know, it was very naughty. And in the eulogy, my father it was the cancer of the liver, so that the jaundice got him. He said it was a shame to see him 3 months later still orange, you know.
Oh my God.
And no, it's gone down very well. So no, I bring him back. I wouldn't let him shoot. We'd be eating the 11sies, I do say. We'd be having KFP burgers. We'd be having chili pheasant sausage rolls. Then if I could pick my last drive before supper, there's a drive called Tim's Hedge on the shoot, which you can only do towards the end of the season. You bring about 400 acres in of partridge, and you ping them all over the place. And there's not many partridges about, but you are trying to get every last partridge off the shoot, and you ping them about. And what's lovely is when I sort of do it, I go and sit down in the ditch in the front of this drive in this hedge, and I watch them, and I go right, left flank in, right flank in, blah blah blah, and it's lovely. And if you had a 15-mile-an-hour southwesterly wind on that hedge, we drive them, so it's over a little B road, so you drive them over the road, and they won't take it on early season. So end of the season, they take it on, and if you get a wind, they sort of head for number 4, and then they split and they fly down the whole line. So if I could be anywhere for my last drive, I'd be on peg number 3 there. I'd have my godfather on my right hand side. I'd have my good mate George Lockwood on my left hand side, and I'd have my dad stuffing for me. And then we'd head back to the shoot shed for, you know, a jerk pheasant pie or something like that. It would be brilliant.
That sounds brilliant.
What it's all about.
Sounds really nice.
Yeah.
Sounds like an amazing drive.
It's when the wind's on and it pings. We had the last day we did before Beaters Day last year was a sold day. Actually, they had 118 shots for 24 birds.
Oh,
so 18 20-mile-an-hour wind, and this is on flat ground.
But hold on, when the wind's right, can't you just send a couple of beaters to block the road and be like, apologise, just do the drive?
No, it doesn't. Oh, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Just, you know, take a, you know, it's
but early in the season,
collateral damage.
Oh, yeah. Really lovely, and a lovely way to finish it off. That's what shooting's all about.
Yeah, it's the camaraderie, isn't it? That's what it's all about.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Hugo, for joining us.
Well, thank you very much for having me on. It's been great fun.
Yeah. No, it's been great, Hugo. Thank you ever so much.
Cheers.
Right. Before we go then, all that remains for me to say is that there's a final reminder that you can get your hands on a pair of the very exclusive Guns on Pegs podcast shooting sock garters by sending us your shooting dilemmas for us to resolve, or by sending us your unpopular opinions or sharing your forgotten drives or drives with great names. Just drop us an email to pod@gunsonpegs.com, and if we read it out in the next episode, we will send you some garters. Another reminder to send us your shooting heroes if you want to be in with a chance to win that day's fishing on the test or the peg on a shoot day. Again, pod@gunsonpegs.com. We'll be back in a couple of weeks' time with another episode and another special guest. But until then, thanks very much for listening, and goodbye.